Most of my videos previously were getting like 300, 400, 500 views. This video in less than like 24 hours got 12,000 views. And I couldn't stop refreshing the analytics because the amount of dopamine that you get from seeing that, it's like, whoa, what happened here? This is a cheat code. And so at that point, I was like, wow, let's see if we can do another one, another one, another one. And you got to the point where I just started recording ChatGPT screencasts every day because it was too easy. I was like, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity.
Don't confuse what you do with who you are. If you then you go and do something else, you still are.
Sometimes it's not the skill set, but it's the beliefs. In fact, I find more commonly it's a belief that holds me back. It might not be that you're bad on YouTube. It might just be that you have a limited belief, for example, like putting yourself out there. It's one of those cases where if you just don't stop, the longer you stay in the game, the better you get. The better you get, the more likely you are to get the results you want.
I do better in business, but I'm more of an asshole, and I don't like being an asshole. So like finding that balance, that's one of the things that is the mastery. How can you be like ultra high performer in business and then you just go back to like be a completely normal dude? And we are live today with none other than Julian Goldie, the man, the myth, the legend. Julian.
Good to be. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Doing the podcast came as me asking Julian, how do I do this YouTube thing? You know, I struggle so much with like sitting and getting comfortable with the camera and stuff. It's like, yeah, just do interviews. You know, people will give you lots of great insights, great content.
It's good to see you taking action and enjoying it. And I think it'll be great for you and your business and your personal brand. And you learn so much just by speaking to people on these things.
For those of you that watching this that have been living under a rock for the last couple of years and don't know who Julian is within the SEO space, he's one of those making very big air quotes overnight successes in the space because you went huge on YouTube over the last year and change. But I know that the overnight success took you a lot longer than the last year. How long have you been plodding along and doing the things before seeing this massive success?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been working online for 10 years, been creating videos for 4 years. And I remember even early last year, I went to one meetup, I showed someone my YouTube channel, and this guy had like 1 million subscribers. And he looked at my channel, he saw the subscriber count, he saw the view count, he said, "Oh mate, you just got started on YouTube or whatever." I was like, "No, I've been doing it for 3 years." And so it didn't come easy, you know. Yeah, it was 4 years of hard work, and then it popped off, I would say around probably this time last year, about May, April, something like that.
Yeah, I remember. And it's one of those things where you don't know when you're about to go and take that little curve up, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're always just one video away, you know, and you just never know when that video is going to be. I think Mr. Beast, even, he was creating videos for years before he finally got, you know, something that took off slightly.
What was that one video for you?
It's a crazy story, actually. So what happened was I had a whole team working for me. So I had a marketing manager, I had an ads manager on YouTube, we had a thumbnail designer, a YouTube script writer, even editor, etc. And it just wasn't paying for itself, right? And it was slowing me down in terms of content creation. So, for example, you know, sometimes we'd arrange meetings, people wouldn't show up, people weren't that dedicated, etc. And so I was like, right, there's no ROI here. I need to make sure this business is profitable. I'm going to end things with everyone right here. And I you know, ended all the contracts with the marketing team that we had. And so it's just me. And so ChatGPT was taking off. It was popping off at the time. And I was like, I can't get anything edited quickly. So I'm just going to record a quick screen recasting of me using ChatGPT, showcasing my website and some stats and that sort of thing. I'll show a nice chart on Google Search Console. And it was that video that you got to bear in mind, like most of my videos previously were getting like 300, 400, 500 views. This video in less than like 24 hours got 12,000 views. And I couldn't stop refreshing the analytics because the amount of dopamine that you get from seeing that, it's like, whoa, what happened here? This is a cheat code. And so at that point, I was like, wow, let's see if we can do another one, another one, another one. And you got to the point where I just started recording ChatGPT screencasts every day because it was too easy. I was like, I'm not going to miss out on this opportunity.
But I guess it must not have been an easy move, right? Because you have to go past a lot of your own mental encumbrances, like, oh, I have this team, I've built this entire system, this is supposed to work, this is why everyone is teaching, think of a thumbnail, and then just it's not working. Like, I'm just gonna do this other rogue thing and just place a bet.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, well, this is clearly not working what we're doing. And if I compare before and after, there was no difference in the views. And so it was quite painful to see that. But I was like, well, I've tried it this way, I've tried it that way. I've just got to keep iterating. And bearing in mind, like even if you iterate like once a week, if you change one tiny tweak once a week for 4 years, that's like 200 improvements. So you just get another swing at the bat. That's the beautiful thing about YouTube is like you always get another swing at the bat. You always get another video that you can create. You get another day. You get another burst of energy or inspiration. And so it's one of those cases where if you just don't stop, the longer you stay in the game, the better you get. The better you get, the more likely you are to get the results you want.
Where did you get this idea of the incremental improvements from?
So I mean, it was Antoine Rousseau as well, right?
Yeah.
So he's like a good friend of mine from Chiang Mai. We met a few years ago. And so, for example, like he was one person who was always very growth minded. Like he was always like, right, I'm going to change that next time. I'm going to change this next time. So I was like, you can actually do that. Like you don't just get stuck with the first attempt that you had, and it's the same, for example, if I perform music or if I do stand-up comedy or something like that, it's like, right, I can just change one little thing. And after a year, that adds up massively. So it was from that. And then there were people I studied, for example, like Alex Hormozy. And when you look at the way that he does things, he'll implement things very, very fast. And then he'll iterate extremely quickly, like within hours, not within days or weeks. And so I think when you're moving that fast, which I tend to do, like I create videos every day. I've already created an hour-long one this morning. When you move that fast and you iterate so quickly, it's a superpower because no one else can catch up, right? Like, for example, if I'm competing with some big link building agencies who might have like 100, 200 employees, there's no way they can move as fast as me. And so you have to kind of use that as your competitive advantage.
How do you go about this very short cycle, quick feedback loop iterations? How do you set up? I assume a lot of it is mind systems. It's getting past certain pre-concepts about how things should be.
Yeah, 100%. Like a lot of sometimes it's, I tend to find there's two things that can be holding you back, right? So one of them is your skill set. For example, it might be like, right, I'm going to learn to speak more articulately for YouTube so that I can present better and therefore people are going to be more engaged, which means better watch time, which means more views, right? The other thing is beliefs. Sometimes it's not the skill set, but it's the beliefs. In fact, I find more commonly it's a belief that holds me back. So, for example, it might not be that you're bad on YouTube. It might just be that you have a limited belief, for example, like putting yourself out there that holds you back. I know that was something that held me back from public speaking for a long time. And so for me, every single day I have this performance tracker. I think I sent you the template, and feel free to include it in the description of the video if you want. I have this performance tracker where I measure how I performed that day. I measure my energy levels and measure how much I slept. Slightly autistic at this level. And then I measure 3 improvements that I can make every single day. And once I've made that improvement, I'll strike it out. I'll bold text it and strike through it as in like it's done and I've implemented it. And so, if you focus on 3 things that you can improve every day, you tend to focus on the highest impact things that you can change, right? So for example, like changing my shoelaces probably isn't going to change my appearance as much as like getting a tailored blazer or something like that. I know you're a fan of tailored blazers yourself. You gave me a lot of style tips. And so if you've only got 3 changes that you can make every day and you're tracking whether you're implementing them, plus you're only focusing on 3, which means you focus on the highest leverage ones, you're always making progress.
Sorry, I caught up on the stupidest detail. Would you say it's slightly artistic at this level? And yeah. I know you meant that in a joking manner, but I feel like you point to something, and it's something that is perhaps to really go to these levels of high performance where you are at the moment, this immense high output, because you're everywhere at all times. Do you at any point, any doubt or any question around this idea of the hyper optimization, of the constant performance tracker for these minute important, they are important, but like this very specifically, how many hours did I sleep? What are my energy levels? What is this? What is that? How many hours of video? How many, all these different things that came day in and day out. Do you at any point feel like an organicness to things?
Yeah, I think on a very human level, it's not normal at all, right? So, for example, if I told some of my friends that I grew up with the sort of level of optimizations that I do, the systems thinking that I have, probably be quite weird or scary to them, right? And I totally understand that. That's fine with me. For me, it's just like, right, if I want to achieve the goals I have, which are very ambitious and I have high standards for myself, then when I look at all the exceptional people who have achieved greatness, then they're playing in that level of like 0.1% optimizations. Like for example, you look at someone, I don't know, like Cristiano Ronaldo, amazing footballer. He's playing in that level where it's just like tiny little tweaks every single time. And it's extremely intense. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. I don't think it's an organic or particularly fun way to live for everyone. But if you have massive goals, then you have to do things like that, right? Like I don't know anyone who's achieved greatness without doing that. And so for me, I'm totally comfortable with that. I think there's a quote something like, if you want to be exceptional, you have to be an exception, right? Like there's so many SEOs trying to get attention. There's so many agencies. There's a million different link building agencies, right? And so if you really want to differentiate yourself and compete at the highest level, then those optimizations are important. Now, at the same time, you can't forget social connections. You can't do that with different parts of your life. The way that you're going to perform in business with these little hyper optimizations is not the way that you're gonna, connect with your family. Like these are two totally different mindsets, right? And two totally different beliefs. And so on a human level, everything else is totally normal. When it comes to business, I treat it like a sport and I want to play at the elite level.
Let's say to this idea and these processes of higher performance in different points in life, some of the areas where I found they were being counterproductive for, let's say, a normal, organic, balanced human life were personal relationships. Because when you lean your mind and yourself so hard, this has to happen like this, and I need to like shave this, like trim this because it doesn't work, and add this thing, and now let's go to the next level and let me push myself harder, right? When you like basically whipping yourself in the back 24/7, right? And you don't allow yourself to make a mistake. And if you make one, you get angry and like straight, right? It permeates in other areas of your life in a way that I found wasn't good. And I like, oh yeah, I do better in business, but I'm more of an asshole. And I don't like being an asshole. So like finding that balance, that's one of the things that is the mastery, right? How can you be like ultra high performer in business and then when you shut and then you just go back to like be a completely normal dude?
It's just like understanding the mindset that would make you very, very effective in business, for example, is not going to be the mindset that makes you very effective at relationships. So these are almost like you're a different person to every person that you interact with, right? Like if I'm having a meeting, it's a KPI meeting, the intensity and the way that I speak to someone there is going to be totally different to the way, say, if like I call my grandma and we're just having a casual chat. So I think your relationship with everyone is different. And so you can't bring what works in business, for example, into your home life. Like these are two different mindsets, and it's calibration, isn't it? It's calibrating the right things to say and the right way to interact. But that comes naturally. I don't think you have to think about it too much.
I've definitely struggled, right? Really doing the separations. And perhaps, some others might feel a similar struggle. When I started in SEO, I told myself, I'm going to obsess myself with this thing for a year and see if I can get anywhere, right? Because I was just eating dirt as a waiter. And obsessing about it is what got me to not have to be a waiter anymore. And so you sustain the obsession for longer because that's what got you there, right? So that was your vehicle. But then the problem is like for me, it did permeate into everything, and it was hard to talk to me about anything else that wasn't that, right? And then it kind of like goes full cycle where like at some points in life, it's like if you talk to me about SEO, I'll slap you. I want to talk about anything but SEO because like this is why I do 24/7, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think might help you. This is something I learned from Itamar Marani. He's one of my coaches. So when he's working, I only ever see him in a navy polo because when he's working, he always wears that, and that's kind of like a signal to him, like, right, I'm in my business uniform, I've got my business hat on, like this is my business mindset. And then obviously he's got a family and all that sort of thing. And so when he's in that mindset, he's not wearing the navy polo. And it's quite easy to differentiate between the two. Have you ever, I don't know about you, right? But for me, for example, I used to have managers and directors I worked with back in the day when I was working in corporate. And you would see them interacting in business and they would be ruthless. They were ruthless savages. Very, very good at job, very, very effective in business. And then you go to like, I don't know, a party with them, they'd invite you to a party at the weekend, and they're a totally different person. The way they interact with you, the jokes they tell, the charisma, etc. And you're like, where did this person come from? And so I think some people are good at like separating the two, but it probably comes with time as well. I don't think I'm perfect at it, but I think it comes with time and practice, right?
So, what's your relationship with coaches and learning and all these things?
Yeah, I think it came from, even when I was younger, I had a coach for guitar. And so I was totally useless. Picked up a guitar, didn't know where to start. I looked at it, I was like, what the heck is this? And, I'm like, I want to play like Jimi Hendrix. But when I play this thing, I have no idea. My brain is just not synced to it. So I had this coach for a year. And after that, I could play the guitar and I could play like Jingle Bells or whatever, right? And then the year after, second year after that, I could play a few scales. A couple of years later, I could solo, etc., and write my own songs. And so I think from a very early age, I understood the power of coaches. And as soon as I had the money to invest in myself, it was like, right, I'm going to get a coach for this, I'm going to get a coach for that. And as well, the other thing I learned was like, being an English lad, you study like, for example, you study Spanish, you study French, you study German at school. But by the end of it, after 2 years, you can only say like Lederhosen and Guten Tag. Like you're not paying very much attention because you're thinking, when am I going to use this? And then probably about 10 years ago, and at this point I could only speak one language. I started learning Spanish when I lived over in Colombia. And then after that, I learned a bit of Chinese when I lived in Taiwan, learned Thai when I was in Thailand, and then Italian because my grandma's from Italy and, I wanted to speak with her on a better level. Yeah, I mean, probably Italian's my worst because I just don't get to use it with anyone. But because of all that, I learned how to learn. And I think that's a very important skill. So, when you learn a language like that, like you figure out the hacks. You figure out, okay, here's the 80-20 principle. Here's how to remember things. Here's what flashcards and Anki can do for you. And so when you learn how to learn, you can apply that to everything else in your business. And then you can learn way faster. And that comes with iteration as well. They sort of link together.
You learn it because it's part of a curriculum or because it's part of a deal, but like, when am I going to ever use this? So there's no why. There's no reason for. And then you move to a foreign country or you want to connect better with someone that you love. And now you have a why. And then it becomes easy. And the spirit is behind it. Right? I've always found that if I can put my heart into something, no problem.
Isn't it so much more enjoyable? Like if you're doing it for the right reasons, all of a sudden you're coming from a place of like exploration rather than just following along with something. I don't know about you, but I was never a good employee simply because I didn't enjoy someone else being in charge. Whereas, for example, if you choose to learn something, you've got all the power. Like you can choose to do it and you get to choose when you learn and how much you learn and how much progress you make and everything else.
Yeah, no, same. Like I've been employee for the people, and there's always like you have so many questions that are beyond the role, like why are we doing things this way or things this other way, or like why is this rule there, and like if we did it this other way it'd be better, right? Because obviously your role, and so like the parts of your role that are done stupidly, like I just couldn't deal with it. So like, well, if I'm in charge, then I get to remove the stupidity, but then you don't know your own blind spots, right? So that's good to have a good team to also tell you,
it's good.
It's so stupid.
I think that's good when you have someone like that around you. It can be like, why are we doing that? That's dumb. It's hard to find people like that, but very, very useful.
This very tumultuous time in SEO, and there's obviously some stuff that's worth discussing. What I was telling you before the call, I'm curious about the human being, right? I can see the human doing on YouTube, on your channel, doing things, right? But who's the person behind that? That's for me what matters most in life. One of my mentors told me, like, don't confuse what you do with who you are. You do stuff and that's fine, and then you go and do something else, you still are, right? And it's a lot more important about who you are than what you do.
Such a great quote that. I mean, like, I don't know about you, but have you ever had a friend who does take a bit of a hit in business or doesn't get the results that they were previously used to, and then because it's such a solid part of their identity at that point, it's very hard for them to adapt because they're like, I was that guy earning that much money, and now my identity is taken away from them, and it's very hard for them to react to that. So I think this is a really good point. Like, you shouldn't tie your identity to what you do. You should know yourself on a better level.
Yeah, a lot of people
Easy
go
to
through
say,
that
hard to do.
when they sell the business. They sell the business like, well, then who the fuck am I now? Like some shell with 50 million in the bank. What do I do now? And then they just go and they ayahuasca themselves to death. some people, right?
No, I agree with you. I think, like, for me, there's a part of me that would be scared to sell my business because I get so much enjoyment out of it. And I'd be like, right, I have to really adapt and figure out something else I enjoy and replace it.
The quote from Rabindranath Tagore that I like that says, I slept and I dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and I saw that life was duty. I worked and behold, duty was joy. The quote came to me 4 or 5 times across a span of 1 week from completely different sources and disconnected people that I would never expect for them to quote Tagore. And I was like, okay, I'm listening, fine, I get it. What you mentioned now about your fear of, like, if I sell the business, like, you get so much joy from it. One of those things, if you enjoy your work, you never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I feel that.
That's it.
Once you found it, like, why would you get rid of it? You found it. You found the joy.
That's the thing. Like, what more is there? I mean, if you feel like you're winning all day and you feel empowered by what you do, then there's nothing better than that. I've had jobs that I hate and I've had jobs that I love, and it makes a huge difference to everything else in your life. I get to mess around with ChatGPT all the time.
The Spanish Inquisition has arrived. What are the ethical dilemmas that you have to navigate at this level of success?
I mean, for example, if you look at YouTube, right, you've got all these moral dilemmas because, for example, if you look at what happens and if someone is watching this and they don't understand, if you go back to March the 5th, there was a core update. Google announced this core update. I had a bunch of public case studies. Lots of SEO influencers got their websites and their case studies de-indexed for showcasing stuff publicly. Same for me. I had a bunch of public case studies in the same Google Search Console that all got de-indexed. And so you have this dilemma because you want to keep showing up, you want to keep adding as much value as possible, but at the same time, in a very weird way, you feel like you're being watched. You've got one of the biggest companies in the world who personally targeted you and went through your Google Search Console and de-indexed you. And so you have this ethical dilemma because you're like, right, I want to have fun with these videos. I want to showcase interesting stuff. I want to help people as much as I can. And I want to reach the most amount of people and keep showing up. But at the same time, I don't want to keep poking the bear and have stuff like this happening every few months. And it's kind of like you're stuck in between. You're in a middle zone. You're like, how far do I go without annoying people, without poking the bear? So that's kind of one of them. And then another one I would say is when you're putting advice out there on the internet, some people, even if you say, like, don't do this or make sure you edit this before you publish it, etc., they're not going to do that. They're going to follow what you do, not what you say, right? So, for example, if there's a video where I publish like 1,000 blogs in 1 hour, and even though I say, like, don't do this, this is an experiment, it could go terribly wrong, some people see that and emulate it and then think that's the right thing to do when it comes to SEO. So that's another one. It's kind of like you don't want to mislead people and you don't want to bring them into the wrong direction. You kind of have to find, you only understand that once you've got the feedback that showcases, oh yeah, this is, people are doing this and stuff like that. So it's one of those. You don't want to mislead people. You don't want to poke the bear. These are weird situations you get into by publishing YouTube content. The other final thing that I would say is things that I could post online and the opinions that I could have, you kind of have to be a bit careful about it as you get bigger because some people might not react so positively to that, right? Different platforms react differently to different things. So, for example, there might be something that I post on Instagram that I would never post on Twitter, right? Because it's a very different crowd and a different demographic. Now, previously, when I wasn't so big and I didn't have so many people following me, that wasn't even on the radar. Like, it wouldn't have even gone through. So you have this filter as well about, okay, what can you say? What can you think? What's right? What's wrong? How are people going to react to that, etc. So you have to be careful with this too.
So you said a lot of very interesting things here. One is this idea of people will follow what you do and not what you say, even if you tell them as you do it, don't do this. Just no. It's a classical archetypical dilemma. It's the parent that smokes and then the children watch him and says, don't smoke, this is bad for you. Says, why do you do it, daddy? Because I'm an idiot. Then just go and smoke. And there's a dissonance, right, between what you're seeing. So of course, you at no point did you claim to be the daddy of nobody in the internet. What's, let's say, your North Star in order to navigate these situations where you ask yourself, should I do this? Is this right?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's like, okay, if I fast forwarded, say, 6 or 12 months, would I regret posting this? Like, can I see any risk from this? And so if you look at my content since March the 5th, it's so clean compared to the content previous to that. So there was a lot of black hat SEO techniques that we were experimenting with. The number one, you won't find on YouTube anymore. And number two, there won't be any more videos about those publicly, those topics. So this is one of the ways that I've cleaned up, and just having a deeper think about, okay, what do I need to change? How can I reduce the risks of that happening? Like for me, after March the 5th, there was probably 30 days where I just reflected every day on the risks of what I'm posting and how I can improve it and what topics I can and can't talk about and how do you communicate certain ethical issues better.
How do you weigh in the, let's say, the personal risks, weigh in between something that might be risky for yourself, but it's the right thing in the macro for, let's say, the larger community, or the other way around, where it's risky perhaps for others, but it's risk-free for yourself and you could gain from it? How far do you sit to read through the layers of consequence to others so that you can make a choice?
It's a good one. I mean, for me, like I just try to look at it at a macro level. Like if I zoom out, what things can I talk about and what things can't I talk about? And then as well, at the same time, I looked at, okay, if I wanted this to happen every single week, what would I do? Like invert the problem and figure out, okay, if I wanted to have this problem all the time, what are the actions I'll do? And then I can figure out, okay, it's easy now to do the opposite. And so, for example,
That's
like,
a good way.
yeah, it's a mindset I learned from Charlie Munger. He used to talk a lot about inversion and inverting the problem because it just helps you figure out, okay, I'll do the opposite now. Like I know exactly what to avoid and how to stop that happening again.
Interesting. Very interesting is this idea of inversion. It's not dissimilar from concept of the via negativa, right? So similar. It's not the same, but it kind of uses a similar logic. So if I wanted to have this problem every day, what would I do? Therefore, let's do the opposite, right? The via negativa is more like it comes from Christian theology, where you say what is God, and then you would say you ask questions to the idea. You don't go with labels or statements. You go with questions. Like, is God hate? Can't be, cannot, right? Is God greed? Can't be, right? So you start removing things until you're left with something that is harder to define, because you might define it with one word and then still not right, but you get a very close approximation. Like, this feels like it's right because we've removed all the stuff that we know it's not good. What's the safe, good, successful path on YouTube? Should I talk about this thing? No, because this will get me in trouble every single week. Great, let's not do that, right? And you start moving through those and you're left with something like, this looks like I can do this. You'd be right. So I like that. I didn't know that Munger had that. Oh, of course, based on his economic success, makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's a good philosophy.
Yeah, I'm going to try that negativa thing as well. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, Julian, we're approaching the last segment, and I think it's time now to talk a little bit of shop. Algorithm leak. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It was so originally the leak was announced, a few days ago. Google refused to comment on it. If you look at an article a couple of days ago from The Verge, and then yesterday they just confirmed that the algorithm leak is actually real and they're genuine documents. It's crazy to see that. One of the things that I would say though is that if you look through the findings so far, and I think it's going to take a long time because there's like 14,000 different pieces of information in there, 2,596 different modules. It's going to take a long time to get some conclusive evidence out of that. But from what we've seen so far, all the things that, right, for example, like link building, top core authority, site focus, small personal sites, user generated content, etc., all being weighted in the algorithm. If you look at these things, it's kind of amazing that everyone was so spot on. Like the people testing SEO and talking about it were spot on. What do you think
Yeah,
about it?
it's. I was just going through the entire thing during the week. I know there's an advantage to jump quickly on news because you get more views because everybody wants to get the news. But the problem is that you likely don't know what you're talking about. So I like to wait a couple of days and just read what's going on to like paint myself an idea before I form myself an opinion. And after reading, obviously the original piece from Mike King and then Rand Fishkin and a few other people that I linked on the previous State of Search episode, in general, what I see is public liaisons from Google have been telling the public, either on Google Webmasters or in Twitter or on LinkedIn, do these things, or we don't do these things, so this no. And they've been telling the public one thing, and then they sit down with the Department of Justice on a trial, and then they have to tell the truth because they're under oath, and it's you don't lie to the government like that. And then they go and say a very different thing, and they go and talk about things that they never talk about, like NAF books and all these different things, and they say very, very different things. Okay, which one of the two of you, the government or the public, do you think they can just give misleading statements? And then think about it, it also makes absolute sense. Can we go and publicly disclose all the trade secrets and all the different stuff from agencies that we have relationships with, suppliers, this, that, our own internal systems for doing things so much? Well, no, there's probably like a ton of NDAs in place. And then you think of big tech, with the heavy layer of bureaucracy and legal safety nets that they put for themselves, and like, of course they can't go and tell you, yeah, we use NAPBoost, it works like this. They can't say any of that stuff. They literally cannot. A message from Gary Iles from 5 years ago where they says, I can't tell you anything that would cause our world to melt. And what he means is like, I can't say anything that would harm Google, so therefore I'm just going to give you whatever crap. And it's fine, right? Because also, like, why would they tell the truth if that means that then more people are equipped to manipulate the algorithm? Because there's always the two camps in SEO, right? People could talk about white hat, black hat. For me, it's like whether it's ethical or unethical, legal or illegal, right? So like, okay, if it's ethical and legal, then it's fine. Within that, do you work for the best of the user, which is what I would call like proper SEO, or do you just do whatever works and you manipulate the algorithm, which if it works and it's within, the first concept, is also fine, right? Manipulations is the kind of things that get patched over the updates and stuff. Like, okay, now they figured out that if they add these different values about the domain age, they can catch up with the using expiring domains and, penalize your site for these kind of things. Cool. So many years ago, that wasn't anywhere in the picture. So the algorithms pick up and evolve to put more fences around the tricks, right? So I've never been a fan of trickery within SEO, but it's revealed based on the algorithm that they themselves use a lot of trickery to rank stuff. Let's not even talk about AI overviews because that's beyond trickery. Where do you see now the future of the industry headed with the degrees of evolution that AI is getting to right now?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking long term, right? Let's say over the next 5 or 10 years, I don't think that these search engines, in the format that they have currently, is going to be so relevant, right? So, for example, you can imagine in the future, 5 or 10 years down the road, if you want to ask a question, you can ask that AI app or that AI bot on your phone and get the answer immediately. What you're not going to be doing is sifting through 10 different pages trying to figure out, okay, what's the best response to go for? Because with AI, you can just organize and retrieve information so much more quickly. You can get the answer rapidly, especially for very, very specific terms. Like there's so many terms, so many complex ones where you can't get the answer that you need unless it was generated with AI, right? So, for example, if you said, okay, what's the best yoga studio in Chiang Mai that's open today within 2 miles of Niman, you will never get that information from a blog. But AI can generate that in a nice little table for you. And so I think the future of AI is not necessarily, or the future of SEO is not necessarily to optimize for search engines, it's to optimize for AI. And it's like, right, how do you go far wider than just your website and you think about, right, how do I build a brand, an entity that is so closely linked and so notoriously relevant to that topic that AI always recommends me. Like, for example, if you look at my marketing, we're omnipresent. We're across like 10 different channels. We get traffic from 10 different channels for the agency. And so By doing that, we become more omnipresent, which builds a brand. If you're a brand, then you're more likely to get recommended by AI. I think that's the way things are going. And it's like you're actually just building a proper business at that point. You're not trying to build a spammy niche site that makes a few dollars each month with ads. You're building an empire and a real business.
It might ultimately be very similar to what we do now, because ultimately AI has to still find their data somehow. And, their crawlers, we know a lot of it has gone through just basically going to indexes. Like, oh, we want to get everything there is on this subject. Well, like, who has that? Google the keyword. But Google the keyword. Okay, now pull these 2,000 pages, and then from there you find them. Because otherwise, like, you've seen the Ahrefs crawler bot, the years and the time and how they've invested everything to build it, right? To access and fetch all that data. So it'll come to a point where now AI being navigational and be able to like crawl the internet from site to site and all the different things, it's going to be its own network. So it will likely remove the need for a search engine. I think it will remove it for certain queries. I think certain businesses where it's not so easy to access that kind of information, or they won't have such an easy time to categorize the information. Because, for instance, for recent things, I just asked ChatGPT, give me the latest takeaways on the Google algo leak. It's been 4 days, huh? Since it came out on Monday, on the 27th, right? And you didn't know anything.
I've seen this with Grok as well. If you look at Grok, like Grok is fed the latest tweets. It knew nothing about the algorithm. I think you're very right. Yeah.
So there's going to be certain queries, certain like freshness factors, and also there's going to be places where you don't want AI to summarize things for you. Like you want to go to trusted sources. So it's what you were saying about the omnichannel and becoming that brand, becoming that trusted source for XYZ, right? So I think in a way it might be harmful for smaller players because they haven't built that brand, they haven't built that omnichannel presence that will make AI very easy to revert to them as the source. But then if they are in the right other channels where users, like we as humans, unless, the earth does a, backflip and we'll die, we ain't going nowhere. And we'll continue to have real human being problems that need to be fixed. And we'll search for solutions somewhere. Like some people are using TikTok as a straight up search engine, right? Some people go to Google search. Some people will just Google for everything within maps, right? The behavior, I think, is going to be fragmented even more, right? So some people will love it and will adopt AI. And some people like, I don't want to speak to an artificial intelligence. They will be like, opposers to the idea. And they will have to go somewhere else. And they might not want to go to Google because now Google is like the quality is declining. So where will they go? And if those are the audience, I think now becomes increasingly more a game of knowing who your audience is and where they live. Increasingly more, right? Buddhism has the same concept, right? Like nothing is anything by themselves. Everything is empty. And as you look into it, and what do you see on it, right? It's the concept of the potential. So I think there's an immense amount of potential in the current state of affairs.
There's going to be more opportunities as well. Like a lot of people in the SEO industry are worried, but actually, if you look with the implementation of AI, like there's going to be so many opportunities that come up. There's going to be new services you can sell, new opportunities to rank, new ways to get traffic, and it's just like if you're at the front of the crowd rather than at the back of it, there's going to be new things that you can move fast on and learn from and implement fast for your business.
But what's your general position? Are you pro AI? Which from the general I know that, but is there anything about it that you're like, I'm not happy about this? I don't like where it's going. Do you sit in the middle, neutral, waiting to see what happens? Where's your stance?
I think the scariest thing is like just, if you step outside the SEO industry, we're very, very close to the AI, right? Like we have to learn and use it every day, and we understand it at a better level than like 99% of the internet, 99% of the world. So like if you look at how many people have used ChatGPT, it's something like 15% of the world's population, which means that 85% of the world has no idea that potentially their jobs could get replaced by AI. Like there's so many roles that you don't need anymore. There's so many things that AI can automate and do. So many jobs that will get replaced by AI, and most people have no idea what's coming for them. And they're not even in a position to learn or adapt to that point. So that scares me. That scares me for sure. And then, so of course, if you look at these tools like ChatGPT, for example, if they're in a competition, let's say you got Meta competing with ChatGPT, you've got Claude trying to get in there, you got Perplexity, etc. In a very competitive environment like that, you're forced to move so quickly that you can't really have any safety guardrails, right? Like It's not like, for example, when ChatGPT was privately working on ChatGPT and they had a bit more time and space to adapt and think about safety. Now these technologies get released at such a pace that it's hard to consider all the consequences of what they're doing. And I think that will be a concern in the future.
The one thing that a bit hopeful about AI is, I mean, it feels like life is becoming increasingly surreal. And as a Spanish that is artistically inclined, I love the surreals. Like, mind you, I have Dali there for a reason, right? So when life becomes increasingly surreal, this quasi demented arms race for the ultimate AI, and then we'll see people that will go, fuck all of this, and we're gonna back to like live without internet. And I think there will be more division, like the uber techie people and the people say we don't want any of that. We're just gonna go and live like it's the 18th century. Maybe it gets closer to a next age of enlightenment. Who knows?
It's quite an interesting one that you mentioned that because, for example, right now there's a movement of people that do things and don't do things, right? Like, for example, you got people talking about monk mode or quitting alcohol or quitting carbs or whatever like that. And I think there's always a desire to eliminate things and think that's like the magic bullet, the silver bullet, right? And so I can imagine that in the future, you've probably got influencers on whatever channel it is talking about, okay, I cut out the internet, or here's how to go anti-AI and that sort of thing. Like, yeah, I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of polarization, and a lot of people are going to be fearful of this technology.
I hate the expression monk mode so much. I nothing against you using it. It's just like the general concept of monk mode. I Have you seen how monks live? That's your monk mode with aircon and and all this different like fantastically well set up over optimized things don't resemble the life of a monk at all. And it's also like very godless lives. But my take, short rant, apologies. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, right, like if you, let's say you're working online and you're working like 6 or 8 hours a day. In that world, you live more in the digital world than you do offline, which means that, TikTok is probably more influential in our culture, or like YouTube or that sort of thing, the influencer movements, than most things that are happening offline, right? And it's like very hard to separate them. Like if you spend all your time online, then the barrage of information that you get online is going to make you think that's the way the world is. Whereas if you're
Yeah,
offline, you have no idea about all this stuff that's going on online, and you have a
and then you see
totally
the actual
different
world.
viewpoint on the world. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you've got like two different demographics of the population living in two different worlds.
I, I just did a silent retreat for 3 days. One of the single most beautiful experiences of my life. So 100% recommended. If you can ever afford to go offline for 3 days, recommended. And
How do
you
you
see
watch TikTok,
how
though?
you don't, and that's the
Oh,
glorious part.
okay.
No phone,
I'm
no
joking.
internet, no emails. Just like you know, religious scriptures and birds and trees and the rain for 3 days. And even if you do it without the scriptures, right, that's everyone's choice. But the point is, the world keeps on spinning without with all these different things, right? There's a lot of advantages, well, things that we've gotten from all this technology, yeah, sure. But like the world still is without it. And it's so nice to go and just touch some grass for a couple of days, and it gets you back to yes, we have all these online things and all of these things that we stress about, and all these different ways that you can drive yourself insane by looking at others online and think, oh my god, I should be like that, or oh, this guy is telling me that I need to invest in this, or this guy is just all this piece of news, right? It's so like your brain gets pulled in so many directions that having some time in silence with just the world is like, oh, I don't need to go that crazy about life.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
it.
think we'll
I
see
mean,
more.
like, it makes sense to me. Like, for example, the trees don't care what's going on TikTok, right? Or if you're a big influencer, or if you're not, whatever. Like, the world, the universe doesn't care. Like, whatever happens, like you say, it's just going to keep going round.
I always think about this now, like the trees don't care about ones and zeros in a screen the same way that ones and zeros in a screen don't care about trees. There's only one of them that we can live without. So I think we just need to be mindful that for the pursuit of one, we don't end up killing the other that we actually need. Julian, thank you very much. For those that want to get more Julian, where can they go? How can they get it?
Yeah, so if you want to check out Julian Goldie on YouTube, you'll find my channel and I post content on there regularly. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime.
Awesome. Well, Julian, my friend, thank you very much for being on the show. Been a freaking
Thank
pleasure.
you. Cheers.